It's time for another Evolve Sales Live. Welcome back. I'm Jonathan Fisher. Few trends in the venture space are getting as much buzz and attention today as artificial intelligence and data analytics, and for good reason. According to Forbes magazine, organizations are embracing these as key business drivers for intelligent decision-making, and there's no more important step you could take today to plan for the best possible exit. But a recent Forrester study found that 60 to 73% of all data is going unused for analytics. The takeaway? Most companies and founders are missing opportunities. According to today's guest, most data teams fall prey to shiny object syndrome, working on the coolest tech while completely missing essential business problems and opportunities. The solution? Building a data strategy that actually works. Here to share with us exactly how to do that is Simon Warman-Freed. Simon brings a 4-decade career working with companies in a wide variety of industries, including enterprise technology, IT, service sector companies of all sizes, and a stint at Ernst & Young as a highly regarded business analyst. He is the founder and CEO of IBG International, a boutique sales and marketing consultancy built with a unique focus on helping business accelerate growth using a data-driven approach. Simon, you sound like the man for the job today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much, Jonathan. Nice to meet you and nice to meet everybody virtually.
Yeah, fantastic. So if you would, for the sake of our guests, give us a little bit more on what you do every day there at IBC.
Okay, so basically I run a sales and marketing services business, and the aim always is to help companies accelerate growth through sales and marketing and using data at the forefront of being able to do that. Our goal is to help companies to identify how they can accelerate growth. So that is sort of the consulting services around strategy, looking at their current state versus where they want to get to, and their go-to-market planning. And then we actually help with the execution of that. So we are, for some companies, their outsourced sales team or part of their sales team. We do outsourced marketing for a lot of companies and a lot of services that actually drive that growth and make it work inside the business. And the final bit is that we empower teams, we support teams through training and mentoring and coaching. So, and that's pretty much a range of things that we offer clients. And they pick, whichever areas that they want. So they don't always go from cradle to grave. They can select what's relevant to them at that time.
Sure, makes sense. Sounds like rewarding work. So our topic today is steps we can take right now to plan for a better exit. And our focus is going to be on how we can do some data analysis in our companies that can provide for that better liquidity event or however we plan to exit. Maybe we could start by defining terms. We're talking about business analytics. It is kind of a buzzword, as I mentioned in the intro. How would you best define that? What is it?
Effectively, it's being able to take data from your different operational areas, and you can do it on a single operational area, but ultimately across the business is the goal and objective in the longer term. And what you're doing is you are analyzing that data to come out with things that are going to tell you what's going on in your business, which you may not actually know. And it points to a lot of things that can add really quick wins and value to you. So, for example, as we're talking sales, within your existing customer or client portfolio, you'll be able to identify through analytics which companies you can cross-sell and upsell to and what products and services to what companies. That's based around the way in which you analyze your existing customers and what good customers look like. And what they look like, you then replicate that with your other customers who at the moment aren't buying those products and services. And you're able to say, right, okay, we've got a plan there to be able to account manage these people and grow the business in these levels. So that's one way. You can also identify through the behavior and the analytics who's going to leave you, the churn of your customers. And therefore, you might want to put a retention strategy in there to stop them. Or you might think, actually, we're not making any money out of them, quite happy to let them go. But in either way, you can make an informed decision and you can therefore make an impact, in terms of saving money from, or rather not losing revenues where you don't want to lose revenues. Okay. Excuse me. So we also look at discounting. So a lot of the salespeople try and do deals on the basis of giving companies discounts. And you can identify whether you're over discounting and who you're over discounting to through this process. So there are lots of different applications, and these are just some of the ways that can make a big difference to increasing your revenue base and also increasing margins as well at the same time, and in a relatively short time frame.
So it sounds like we have to pull in data from some disparate sources. And when you typically hear data analytics, I'm thinking the IT guys. I mean, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. Who is best suited to do this analysis? Is this like all hands, or how do you propose companies go about this?
So there are two ways that you can do this. So one way is you can employ business analysts and have one or two of those people actually doing the analysis for you. Or like us, we provide a managed service. So we do all the work. We give to our clients the outcomes of what the data is telling them. We sit with them every month. We go through what the data is telling them, and then we help them to put an implementation plan to improve or make changes depending on what the data is telling them to do. So you've got two options, and for a lot of companies, the managed service option is the best one for a number of reasons. So one of the reasons is that actually, when you take on analysts, they're very expensive. And typically, they're always looking for more money. So they don't stay in companies for a long time. So your investment time frame, by the time you got them up to speed, by the time they're actually doing something decent, they'll probably leave. And then you've got to, replace them. Also, it puts a lot of strain on the business to identify what needs to be done. So if you let the business analysts go away and do things, they won't necessarily do things what's best for the business. They do things what they enjoy or think might be interesting to go and analyze, as opposed to having a strategy about actually, okay, where do we need to focus? What's going to make the biggest difference to our business? Let's go and analyze that and then see the impact of that. So, and that's sort of,
it might be helpful to hear some examples where the analysts are just getting kind of pulled off to a sidebar. It's not a core essential opportunity for growth for the business. What are some of these? What are some of the shiny objects pulling these guys to the side?
So they basically they come up with ideas in their minds around, let's say, doing something in HR that is just trying to think of something that we came across. Now, they were looking at people and the time they spend doing certain tasks and whatever. Now, in the main scheme of things, the business was very efficient. It was very doing very well, very profitable, and therefore best use of time wasn't around looking at how people spent their day. It could have been directed more to who should our target market be? Who should we be focusing on there? Or, how can we grow our existing customers? Or how can we improve our customer service, or whatever it might be that's going to make a bigger impact to the top and bottom line, as opposed to something that wasn't a problem at the time in the first place.
You can always tweak.
They thought it'd be.
You can tweak and get a few percentage points on something that makes you look good as an analyst, but that may not have an actual business process improvement that translates to better value or better revenues. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and the other problem is that a lot of people don't really understand data and don't really understand the value of data. So on the basis of that, it's they are unconsciously incompetent as leaders of somebody looking after data. So it's very difficult for them to sort of go and actually tell the business analysts what to do, because they don't really know themselves. So they rely on the business analyst to come up with the ideas and the thoughts, but the business analyst isn't a leader of business. So they come up, as I say, with things that they think might be quite interesting, which has absolutely zero value to the business, or limited value to the business, not necessarily zero.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, VC analysts coming in are not looking at the same things your internal analyst is going to look at. It's got to be a revenue-based look that they're giving it, is what I'm hearing from you. So I'm interested in this account-based angle that you started us off with. Is that one of the missed opportunities, would you say? where company founders are not using data effectively. How are they getting that wrong? I would think that wanting to have, a lot of good key accounts and keeping them happy would be pretty front and center. So how are they missing that? What can they do about
it? So they're missing it on the basis that they don't realize what data they have available and how to utilize that data to get that information back out. So it's most of the time, you're looking at it at the top level. So people look at, okay, revenues, profit, we've got a certain amount of money from these accounts, and they're either happy or they're not happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're not seeing the underlying opportunities or risks within that. And, that is because for most of the SME businesses, they're not used to data, right? The big corporate market, particularly in the B2C world, they live their whole life by running their businesses around data. Mm-hmm. If you look at, in the UK, we have a big company called Tesco. They're a retailer. Yeah. They built a loyalty program based on all the data that they were collecting from the shopping baskets of their customers. They were able to identify things like, okay, Jonathan, you drink Heineken beer. People like you like eating peanuts, so we're going to send you an offer around peanuts and beer and so on and so forth. And they built a loyalty program around that, and it took them to number one as a result because they knew their customers.
Nice.
Yeah? And they knew what works for people like yourself. It's not always going to work 100%, but if it works 90 or 80%, you've got a significant growth in your place. So, but for the small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses, they have a lot of data, but they never worked with the data. They just use financial systems. They use a sales system, CRM system, and that's how they measure success or non-success. But the devil is in the detail. And knowing if you can get to that level of detail, then you can actually identify any risks very early on and mitigate those risks, but also identify those opportunities. And by the way, because it's your own data, most of it is your own data, so it's not a lot of it external, it actually gives you a competitive advantage because you're the only ones who have that data.
Sure.
Right? And it gives you advantages at two levels. Number one, at the sales level, because your data's telling you what you can do with what customers as a result of this, but also you can actually gain the data itself could be highly valuable if you get the right data and if you've got the right data. So, for example, we're working with recruitment business. Yeah. Now, recruitment is a two-way process. You've got people who want talent, and you've got the people who've got the talent who want jobs. And actually, within that, you've got a lot of rich data because you can understand what the market is looking for and be able to understand what the industry by sector, by whatever, is looking for from a skills perspective, and so on and so forth. And that is a great, great value to a lot of companies. You've also got the people skills element of it, and you're able to identify what skills are available and what skills could be available, etc. And that is worth a lot out in the marketplace because you could resell that data to other businesses, or you could just use it for demonstrating that you're market leaders in this and presenting it in a way to businesses to say, look, we know what we're doing. This is what's going on in the market. This is what it's telling us, blah, 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 blah. So, it's thought leaders or whatever, but there's so much you can get from stuff that you've already got most of the time. It's not like, there people are collecting this data all the time. And it's amazing, for example, when we start with businesses, we start with because most people say, oh, well, our data's, not good. And, we haven't got much data and all that. They have a sales ledger and they have a purchase ledger, and those have to be accurate because if they're not, you've got a major problem in your business. And within those in the sales ledger, you have so much information. You have information on who the customer is, where they're based, what they bought, what price and discount they bought from, and sometimes even more information. And just that starts to be able to show trends within the business based on your existing customer base as to who's doing what, where the opportunities are, where the risks are.
Well, my head is immediately circling back to how we started the conversation. If I want to look for a suitor, what a great approach, right? If I have this data that validates that there's JV type of relationship already feasible, there's a business case for that, that definitely could open up that further conversation, it would seem to me. Have you seen that actually take place in M&A space? Folks really leveraging data? You have any examples, case studies that pop to mind?
Yeah, so we've just been working with a business, and we put this system in place. And the beauty about having a system like this or a platform like this is that the people who are looking to invest in the business are able to actually be very firm in terms of what the numbers are saying, because it's the data within the business that's saying it. So they can actually, they're not looking at high risk stuff that they put together. They're actually looking at, really solid numbers. Sure. So that means that for the people who are selling, it gives them a higher multiple on two levels. One, because they've actually got this nailed in terms of using technology and data to drive the business. And that gives you normally a bigger multiplier. But the other is the validation of the numbers within the business. So that it gives it a certainty and security, which they wouldn't otherwise necessarily have. So it means that typically people get a much bigger. So on this particular occasion, instead of being a one-on-one on turnover, it ended up being a 7-on-1 on turnover for the business, which gave them a very big, obviously a much bigger return on their investment.
That makes a lot of sense. And you have the hard information instead of trying to generalize. And it sounds feasible based on industry data. That's not nearly as powerful as the real analysis of that actual entity. That makes a lot of sense. I want to take a brief pause and remind our audience we have some good questions starting to come in on the chat line. Thank you for that, audience. Let's keep them coming. When we get to the half hour, we will go into a Q&A session for 10 or 15 minutes there. So this is your opportunity. It's one of the great things about coming and seeing us live to interact with the expert. So keep them coming. We're saving those, and we'll definitely get into those after the half hour. So, Simon, we've mentioned a couple of ways where doing effective business analysis can help you in the M&A space. If you're looking for a suitor, if you're looking to JV up, maybe you're looking to purchase a company. If they'll let you bring your analysts in. You mentioned earlier that this is a process that most don't do well. You offer this as a service, so you must have a pretty good a process in place, I would imagine. And I've come across, you have an 11-point analysis that you'll do, at least a high level, to build a good, effective data strategy. And I guess I'm assuming, and you can correct me, that this is a methodology you could use internally, or it's definitely something you might want to do even before hiring a managed services firm. Would you agree with that? It'd be a good, it's a prior step.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, it's a great step. I mean, there are a number of things that you need to think about, and one of them is what data you can get when. So a lot of people collect data, but they don't really know why they're collecting it. For example, on websites, you say, all right, you get your, download this and you put your email in there and whatever. Depending on the value of the piece that you're getting someone to download, people might actually be willing to put a little bit more data in there that could be highly relevant. And it could be, their mobile number, so that you've got a communication along that. Or it could be something around their business that, you particularly want to find out about. But whatever it is, it's very, very important when you start thinking about your business and you start thinking about growth, actually what you can do for yourself in order to help that process, and that's have a data collection strategy, call it data collection strategy, which is all around what data can you collect when that's going to add value and help you and help your customers as well. So it's not just about a one-way scenario, it's got to be a two-way scenario, so it's got to be a value to your customers. But ultimately, that brings in that level of detail so that you get to be able to know your prospect, know your customer, and be able to then engage with them on the basis of what they need that engagement to look like, because that's how they want it to be.
So it sounds like there's going to be some work for multiple team members to do that they may or may not see a direct correlation to their own career goals, at least in the short term. Is it a challenge sometimes to sell this internally when you're trying to really dive deep?
It is. And one of the reasons why is because people don't understand it. And therefore they don't understand the value of what the data can tell you. When you've been in data for years, as part of what I've done, data's been quite often at the heart. It's second nature. So for me, it's like a no-brainer. And really, driving your business by knowledge and insight has to be the best way of doing it. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people are very successful and they don't do it at all. And you can't get away from that fact. But to be solid as a business, to be able to know, because this isn't just a one-off process, you just keep evolving. Yeah. And so it's an ongoing process, but the value is so high. It takes a bit of effort, initially to get people's heads around it. But once they start driving their business like this, and some of it is real-time data as well. So, for example, in call centers, we use this approach. And where there are problems in call centers, we can flag it straight off with a red. And that call center problem and the end customer can be dealt with satisfactorily very quickly at that point, as opposed to looking at a report 3 weeks later and say, oh my goodness, look what happened there, So there's a lot of value, depending on what business you're in and so on, in actually having this mix of analytics for the sort of the monthly things that are, you could drive monthly, and some of those things that you need to know straight away. Is there a problem or what's the next best offer we could give someone if they don't want that particular offer, we have a next best, and you can have that flowing.
So some of the key KPIs that you focus on when you're looking at your client companies would be what? Give us just a few that translate to better valuation. Again, the theme today is getting to a better exit. Can you give us sort of a list?
So, obviously, profit. So profit after tax is a really important measure. Also, revenue is also a key measure for that. Usually it's around longevity of customers. So if you've got people signed up and you've got contracts and they look like they're going to be retained, and again the data will tell you that, then that's really important. So making sure that you've got some form of longevity of contracts in play. Also, your IP is important, but that's not data related per se, but it is, when you're thinking about your valuation, it's not all about data. You have other things in there that are important, like your IP as well, that you need to think about. And you need to think, very, very seriously when you're looking to exit a business, about your team, the quality of your team. That is really important. You've got a management team in there, so that it's not just about an individual or two individuals, because for a lot of people who buy in, that's a bit high risk, particularly if they're investing in it, as opposed to buying the company where they've got an existing
challenge for a founding team when they're in many cases they are the geek that created the unique solution. To get away from that owner dependency can be a challenge. Speaking of challenge, let me challenge you just a little bit on something. So you mentioned profit being an important measure. It seems like there's been this trend in recent years of not even worrying about profit, just trying to build a huge customer base and basing it almost purely on revenues. And some of these companies are getting they're selling for huge multiples. They're not even profitable. Is that a trend that's continuing? Am I a year late on that? What's the current scene? I'm a layperson in this field, right? When it comes to business analysis, but I read all of the publications. What are you seeing on this front today?
It depends on the sector. It depends on the industry. So, some industries, some sectors, for example, people who are involved with blockchain and things like that, they're getting ridiculous valuations against being unprofitable. I mean, if you think initially when the internet came in and you had companies who got ridiculous valuations, weren't making any money whatsoever, just sucking in money, but you had paper millionaires or multi-millionaires, but at the end of the day, most of them collapsed because there is no sustainable business behind it. So it's depending on the sector you're in. If it's a sexy sector, if it's got all the hype, then absolutely, because you're just going to get investment flowing through the door, and people are going to buy it because they for a ridiculous amount, just because the market's hyped. Yeah. And they don't understand what they're investing in.
Yeah, even sophisticated people.
What they're buying.
Yeah.
But for the majority of business, yeah, absolutely. Well, look, one of the things I learned when I was at Ernst & Young, I worked with the corporate finance teams, okay, and they were looking at companies who exit versus float. And basically what most people, advice to most people would be, do a trade sale, right? Why do a trade sale rather than float your business? The main reason is that people who invest on stocks and shares don't understand your business whatsoever. So all they care about is turning a profit and making, money on their shares, ultimately by selling them or by just, the yearly monies that they earn as a result if you're profitable. When you do a trade sale, you have a situation where somebody sees your business in a different way. They understand your business and they might buy your business for a completely different reason. So, for example, US to UK, you're a US guy, you might come to my business in the UK and go, do you know what? You've got a customer base there. It could take me 10 million to go and build that. So I'll buy your company for 8 million, even if it's not worth 8 million, just because it will still save you 2 million on doing it. And you've got a ready-made business there that's got the client base. Yeah. So people value the people who buy in trade sales, understand the business, and they value things differently. So sometimes you can get an even higher amount because they value something in your business which you didn't think was necessarily particularly valuable, but to them it really is. And therefore they're prepared to pay a higher figure for it. So, around the exit, unless you're floating because you want to go global and you want to be part of that whole process and so on and so forth, really a trade sale is your best bet to exit.
It's been a very fast-paced and very fascinating conversation already, Simon. In the next minute and a half or so, could you share with our audience how they could go a little deeper with you and maybe learn more about how they can do business analysis today to provide a better exit tomorrow?
Yeah, so please feel free to email me at simon.warman, WARMAN, -Freed, FREED, at IBG-world.com. That's the best. Or you can contact me on my UK mobile number, which is 0044 7785 232301.
All right, excellent. And a friendly reminder that our show is sponsored by Overpass.com. Overpass is the world's leading solution for hiring high-quality salespeople fast. With thousands of highly qualified, ready-to-work professionals waiting to meet you, Overpass allows you to hire a whole team in just days instead of weeks. Create your free account and see just how easy it is for yourself at Overpass.com. And if you enjoy the content here on Evolve Sales Live, check out our podcast, The Evolve Sales Leader, for an entire library of relevant and actionable insights. Find The Evolve Sales Leader wherever you like to get podcasts. Well, let's move into our Q&A session now. So we got a good list of interesting questions from our audience. And Andrew here is asking a question. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but maybe you can go a little deeper on this. Will buyers acquire a company without revenue if it has a huge user base? Does that still have value? Is that still worth chasing or using as a business model?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the user base, as long as they feel that the user base can be monetized, that's the key ultimately. So it's all about monetization. So you may not have the money now, and quite often a lot of companies struggle with that. I remember in the early days, I think Facebook struggled with that for a long period of time. How do you monetize something that you were giving away free? And so, building that base, as long as there is a route map to monetize at some point that either you as a business know or the people who are coming in have thought about and able to do that, then yes. The only other thing is you might, I say, if you're in a hype industry, then that probably doesn't matter. As long as you've got a big user base, they'll go and buy it because they think, there's a great opportunity there. Absolutely. Anyway. So
yeah.
I hope that answered the question.
Paul is asking about the technology you would use for the data management. Is there a specific database management system that you like? Or, could a company conceivably send over the data to a team who builds an Excel dashboard? How sophisticated does this need to be? And what are some of the tech stack recommendations that you make on this front?
So we use Microsoft typically. So we use Azure for the security element of the thing, and then we have our own database so that we can take the data from our customers and we can then analyze that, and we build reports for them that they then get access to, and we sit with them each month and do that. So it's a managed for service for that. A lot of technology that's available is very expensive. So, but then you also need the analysts to be able to
and there's
do the analysis.
There's still a lot of Oracle people out there, and IBM people, I'm sure, and MySQL, all those people. So it's good to have somebody who has the specific competencies with those, I would gather.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So SQL for a database is, quite popular.
I have a comment here from Josh who says data is the new oil. I think he might be onto something there.
That was a very slick comment. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, definitely. No, it is. And, people don't realize they probably got value. You could have a business and part of your value. So I did some work with a company called Bounty in the UK, and Bounty primarily were a distribution company. So what they did was they worked with big companies to be able to distribute their products when a woman gave birth, the sort of day after the woman had given birth in a hospital. Yeah. Okay. And part of that process as a limited area was that they collected the data. So the name of the mum, the name of the child, the date of the birth, and the date of the mother. Okay. And they used to do a bit of work with these companies, like Johnson and Johnson and people like that to actually do a bit of work on their behalf in terms of marketing to them. And when I got involved with them, I was looking, their valuation was like £15 million or something like that. And then we looked at changing that to not just babies, but to young families. And that opened up the whole data marketplace for them, because all of a sudden you're talking about mothers as a mother, as a woman, as opposed to just a mother. You're looking at all the children, different ages and different products that are relevant to them. Fathers as a man as well as a father. And so the value of the business changed dramatically because the value of the data took precedence over the valuation of the business overall, even though it was primarily a distribution company helping those companies distribute their products at birth to
interesting case in point.
Or mothers. New mothers.
It really is, especially with all the logistics issues we've been having. But here, even still, the data was more of greater value in the marketplace. I had a question here about from Jay Michael asking, how would a company's people add value in terms of this whole question, valuation? What are some recommendations, and how does it even work? Right, you've got the team you've got. Like, how does maybe this analysis impact your human capital element?
So, data. The thing about data is it gives you questions or it gives you pointers. The human element is actually the implementation of doing things that are going to make the difference to improve your business. So the data will only give you information But in itself, it's a waste of time if you don't actually act on it. So the team, the leadership team, the people within the business need to act on it in order and make those decisions and follow them through in the business to make sure that it has the relevant impact and, delivers what, you hope that the analysis would,
good stuff,
would help you achieve.
So, question from JP here. So, what are like the best next steps? Like, here's what I'm hearing from the question. You kind of got, I'm thinking in terms of three elements here, right? You kind of have the whole bit, the data strategy piece. You've got kind of getting your people on board to implement what's needed. And then there's the tech solution piece, at least. Is that kind of, are those the three components? How do you start? I mean, if you're a founder and you've got your own data guys, we started the whole thing by saying they're probably doing it wrong. So what do you recommend to the founders listening to us today?
So I think I would initially pick one area. So pick sales, pick marketing, pick supply, suppliers, which is the biggest area either of opportunity or of something that you feel isn't doing well in your business. And then focus in on what data you currently have. So for example, if it was sales or if it was your supply chain, then, you've got the sales ledger, you've got the purchase ledger, and you can run and get analysis run on that. And that will give you a lot of insight relatively quickly to start with. And then that will give you a quick start to getting some value back in terms of what sorts of things you need to do in order to grow your sales, reduce your churn, target more effectively, those sorts of things. But then you need to think about, okay, well, what else do I want to know? And what data do I have available already that I need that will enable us to be able to find that information out? Yeah. So, and usually once you start that process, it becomes quite an intuitive process because people who are running it now start to see what the art of the possible is. And then they're asking, well, actually, okay, now I know this. Now, what if, or what about that? I'd like to see if we could actually do this or do that. And, more often than not, that's the data can tell you that. It's just the way in which you analyze it.
That makes sense.
That's it.
Another technical question coming in.
Oh God! Yeah, I'm about as technical.
This isn't that bad. This is basically, do you recommend on-site or off-site solutions?
Yeah.
When you're doing the initial, hot site or cold site for DR, and what do you recommend on that? Like, a data site that's set up and ready to go, or should it be outsourced? What do you recommend there?
Yeah, so I recommend outsource because the business, unless you're used to doing it already, which is a different kettle of fish, but for most businesses they're not. So you could invest a lot of money trying to do it yourself and actually not succeed, and just to spend a lot of money. So using a third party accelerates how quickly you get value out of it, and also ensures that you're getting the right things answered, and actually working with them then to what you want on a regular basis in terms of output. And that output would change from day 1 to day 100, because in 100 days you'll know certain things and you'll want to know new things. And so you can do that, and you don't have to make the whole investment in the process of having business analysts and lots of technologies, a technology stack and all this sort of stuff. You don't need all of that. You've got it there for you, and it's all managed for you. But more importantly, you're dealing with people who know what they're doing, and therefore it takes all the pain away, and it allows you to focus on running your business and implementing the outcomes of what it says, rather than trying to worry about how do you get to the point where you know what.
Well, you're a consistent man. You worked for years with managed IT services, so you still see value in that, obviously. How important is your overall disaster recovery plan is a logical question with that as well. Like, is that something that maybe, is it maybe not looked at as close as it should be? And how closely do, potential, venture capitalists or other buyers look at that?
To be honest, most people these days, disaster recovery is really important. With what's going on with hacking and God knows what else, it is a big challenge. The difficulty is for a lot of businesses, and there is a lot of risk just in the fact that people work from home now. People are moving PCs and stuff even more than they ever did before. Everywhere you go, there's a potential risk, a security risk, cyber risk, this risk, that risk. So having a program in place that mitigates that is, if you can do it, really, really important. And we have something called Gdpr. I'm not sure if you have it in the US, but it's all about data protection. So for example, if you've got customer data in there and people's personal data or business data, whatever, you could be fined significantly if that data was breached and went outside of your own domain, so to speak. So the data itself can cause companies a lot of problems if they're holding data that belongs on people and companies and stuff. So you've gone off.
I don't think we have the GDPR here in the US. I think what we have is the California Consumer Privacy Act is going to be the nearest thing. And yeah, so I mean, the EU is maybe a little ahead of us on certain respects on some of these issues, it would seem.
Well, you could say ahead. To some extent, I would say that in Europe they're trying to make it harder for you to do business. It's a bit like you shouldn't cold email people but they do put a rider in there at the moment that basically says, unless you've got something that you believe is of real value to that person, right? But the principle is that, like, for example, in Australia. So in Australia, you are not allowed to contact anybody who hasn't already given you prior acceptance that you can communicate with them. Well, it's like, how do you do that for new business? You don't know these people; they don't know you. So how do you get their approval? Well, you can't get their approval.
You're going to have to try to.
You can't.
Try to get them opt into something else, I guess.
I don't understand it.
Maybe it might have to be less honest, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it ends up being because people say they have that opt-in, but the way that they do that is through partnerships. But actually, the person if I opt into you, you say, "Oh, I've got loads of partnerships." I mean, I don't necessarily accept the fact that all your partners should have access to being able to market to me. Yeah? But they use that as a way of saying, well, we've got implied permission, but it's not actually the case. It should be a one-on-one. If they really want to implement it properly, it should be company to company.
Agreed.
Not
well, Simon,
to many companies.
It's been a very interesting and wide-ranging conversation today. Thanks so much for coming and being with us here on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. And
all right. And on behalf of the whole team here
to come back.
at Overpass and Evolved Sales, thanks for being here, everyone. Go and make it a great rest of your week and weekend.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Thank you. Cheers.